Matthew 26, 1 through 5. When the disciples had finished, when Jesus had finished all these words, he said to his disciples. So this is after he's telling them about the righteous and the unrighteous, those on the left and those on the right, referring to the judgment. So this is usually Jesus and his disciples were a more personal crowd. There were those always following him. They weren't just crowds that came to hear him. So more personal things he would tell them. And that's what it's noting here. It's kind of like we who follow God have a closer bond with him, and he may show us stuff that others don't understand. We may be able to see because we follow him and know who he is. That's how this was happening here. You know that after 2 days the Passover will be celebrated and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. Now he's told them that he's going to be crucified before. And it was common knowledge when the Passover was. And so he ain't really... he's, in plain words, he's telling them in 2 days, you know that 2 days will be the Passover, and I'm going to be crucified then. It's kind of like he's letting them... They already know when the Passover was, because they were going to go up to Jerusalem. It would have been common knowledge that it's just something they expected to do, was go up there. But to have him crucified wasn't. He's talked about his death a few times, but it's more specific here because it's crucifixion. Crucifixion is invoked by the Romans, not by those that Jesus has been angering thus far. They do stonings. So of course, this would have instantly probably raised question with them. Okay, the Pharisees, the priests, are the ones upset with Jesus. They're probably thinking to themselves, how's he going to be crucified? They're not questioning what he's saying. They're just wondering how this is going to come about. Because the fact that they're following after him, they're already accepted of some point of what he said. Now, there may be a doubt about him saying this, but of course, questions of how would have been probably instantly their response. Because the Rome was the only ones that could order crucifixion. So at this point, he's been teaching how he's Christ, the anointed, setting up his kingdom. So some of them may be thinking, okay, he's going to overthrow Rome and they're going to kill him. It's a possible thing that they may have went through their minds. It being Passover, a bunch of people would have been in town, in the place. So, of course, sometimes when God reveals something to us, it raises more questions than answers, and that's kind of one of them things here. They probably had more questions after he told them that than they knew what was going. But God lets us know things on his timing, and we're better equipped to handle it based off that. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people met at the palace of the high priest Caiaphas by name. So they met at his palace. First of all, Caiaphas was a priest. He should have never had a palace. He should have been living in the temple. Shows the corruption of the priesthood in that instance. His palace was probably given to him most likely by Rome, to appease him, try to keep the Jewish people in line with Rome, kind of be a peacekeeper type thing. So they met with him. Now, these people meeting with him probably were just the ones who had a problem with Jesus. It wasn't probably your Nicodemuses and all these that would later, who at this point, we don't know whether they're following Jesus completely, but they're at least in question where their commitment was, so they would not be at this meeting because of that. This meetings most likely would have been only those who had problem with Jesus. We see later how they meet in secret at night, which was against their law to do so, simply so it could be one decided decision. And plotted to arrest Jesus underhandedly and to kill him. Again, this group of only people was only allowed to kill people. This was decreed by Rome through stoning. So what they're planning on doing most likely is to have him stoned. So it shows that they had their plan. They had their plot to arrest and kill him. But God's plan was to have them hand him over to Rome. See, at this point, we see nothing of them plotting to have Rome deal with them, because it wasn't part of their plan. But oftentimes, even if what the world plans, God has something bigger. What we as Christians even plan sometimes, God has bigger things for it. But they said, not during the feast, else there might be a riot among the people. Now the feast, again, this is one of the few days that every Jewish person would have came in. The other one would have been the Day of Atonement from Pentecost. This was a very important day. So there would have been a lot of people here. Jesus was only at this point mainly reaching out to the Jewish people. So almost every follower of Jesus was Jewish. We see he had talk with the Samaritan woman, but their plan is not to do it during Passover. Jesus is telling his disciples it's going to happen during Passover. So we see how man's will contradicts God's will. God's will is always going to be what happens, and that's what would happen as we know it.